This is the Rich Dad Radio Show. The good news and bad news about money. Here's Robert Kiyosaki.
Hello. Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show. And we have sitting in for me today, Ken McElroy. And he's at the Rich Dad office. And this is the inaugural show from my home office at my house, which is about 10 miles away from my office. So anyway, this is your first time we're working out the bugs. But this is part of our series. It's called What Do You See in 23? And Ken is my first guest here because just before 2008, Kenny and I were licking our chops because it was a real estate bubble supreme. It was a subprime thing. Everybody was flipping houses and doing all this. And we knew this, in 2008, we knew a crash was coming. And it turned out to be one giant crash. And Kenny would always do this. He says, man, I was going to make a lot of money. And the reason for this program, What Do You See in 23, is this. I suspect this crash is going to be different than 2008. So I bring Kenny. Kenny and I made fortunes because after the subprime market crash again in 2008, the Fed dropped interest rates like this. Our debt went like this. And now in 2023, we're screwed. So the whole ecosystem has changed. We have the Biden crime family in charge. He stands in front of the television and he says, yeah, he went to see the border. And Kenny and I live on the border. And I tell you what, we've been to the border more times than Biden has. I don't think he's ever been there. But he stands there and lies, and he says he's been to the border. And so this economy is very, very different because, Kenny and I were good friends with Donald Trump and his family, the two boys, Don Jr. and Eric Trump. And Kenny and I have hunted with them. They're great young men, fantastic young men. And you combine that to Hunter Biden, who's this deviant drug-dealing son of a what. And this economy is different. So I'll welcome back Kenny McElroy. We have made fortunes together, but that was in 2008. It came like this because interest rates came like this, but interest rates are going up like this. And we have a psychopath at the helm of the U.S. government. So welcome to the Rich Dad Radio Show, Kenny. You look good in my seat there.
Yeah, thanks. It's great to be here. In your studio. So thanks.
Yeah, you're launch number one, which is perfect. So I have a question. In that saying, it's different this time. Do you concur or not concur that this crash is going to be different than 2008 for real estate specifically?
Well, there's a couple things. One, the sentiment, the people out there believe, that's the same. So in other words, everybody just got through this 10-year run and they believe next year is going to be better. So just like in 08, when you were talking about earlier. So that's the same. People, when guys like you and I come out and say, this is going to be a rough patch, could be even worse. Everybody's saying that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. So it's kind of the same. That's the same. But I agree with you. There's a lot of things that are very different this time around. And, people are in a lot worse situation, I believe. I just did a video this week on YouTube. There's over 300,000 people already underwater on their mortgages that bought in 2022 already. So that's out on
300,000.
Yeah, 300,000. That's out on a Yahoo article. Just Google it. So it's starting, Robert, as you said.
So there's another thing too. Kenny is the author of great books called ABCs of Real Estate and Property Management, which is the key to real estate. If you can't manage property, get out. And number 3 is the Advanced Guide to the Finance of Real Estate. And what Kenny has always said, the key to real estate is jobs. And this time, not only interest rates came down after 2008, interest rates are going up this time in 2023. And we're going to have massive unemployment. You look at, I forget Meta or Facebook, whatever, they're laying off thousands and thousands and thousands of workers. So it's not only interest rates going this way, it's unemployment going this way too. And would you agree with that, Kenny? If you don't have jobs, that crushes real estate.
Yeah, I always tell people, real estate exists for people, like period. Like you have to have people for it to work. It doesn't really matter what it is, an office building, retail, shopping center, apartments, houses. If there's no people and they can't afford it, then, real estate's going to suffer. And that's where we're heading next.
Right. So when they dropped interest rates after 2008, people were flush with cash because they could afford to flip and do all those goofy things. Then they could afford to go shopping. So you mentioned one of my favorite subjects is shopping centers. I think they're going to be turned into apartment houses eventually, because if he keeps crushing retail plus restaurants plus his commercial.
I'm looking at one, actually. I'm actually literally looking at a shopping center right now that's lost the anchor. Some of the tenants that are in there are, struggling, obviously, because you need an anchor in order to draw people to those. And so Ross and I are looking at one right now that we would basically demolish and then put multifamily on.
You'll put apartment houses on it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So same thing, what happens in these cycles, different kinds of real estate gets repurposed, as you know. So, and we're looking at several corners around Phoenix and Tucson right now where, that's already happening. The online retailer, like, I don't know about you, but there's been 50 Amazon packages to my house in the last 2-3 days, right? Because obviously it's Christmas time, around that time. But the point is, people aren't doing the bricks and mortar anymore, and it's really starting to show up. And so when those stores start to close, then the other little guys that are in those centers start to close, and then and that's when you start to repurpose those corners.
Yeah, and there's one big difference about Kenny and the average investor out there. I mean, you got your start in property management, didn't you?
Yeah, I got, that was, hindsight is really, really, I was really fortunate where I started in the business by understanding the financial part of the business. Like if you don't have enough rent to pay your expenses, you lose the property, or if your expenses are too high, or your cost of debt, which is kind of the big issue right now. So all of those things came, I learned through property management, through managing hundreds and hundreds of properties. And so when I finally got the courage to buy them, I understood it operationally.
Right. And the great thing about Kenny, your partner came from the savings and loan industry, right? Ross.
Yeah. Ross was at the time the youngest. I don't know if this is a good thing, but he was the youngest president of a savings loan in the country. I think it was Sandia Savings in New Mexico, right out of college. And so he learned how people were getting loans and, the process. And so when 2008 came, Robert, Ross is like, hey, this is not good. Like these people, they can fog a mirror, but they can't pay the loan back, so right. It was not a good thing. So that's, as you know, you just look at that. That's kind of a red flag when they're giving away money like that.
So I want to explain to everybody one of the reasons Kenny is so successful. He's a professional in the business, but he started in property management, and property management is where the money is made or lost, right in there. Plus his partner comes from the finance side, the savings and loan, which are all gone today. And that's a secret to his success. And again, I just want to reiterate this. In 2008, when everybody was out there buying houses they couldn't afford, they had ninja loans, no income, no job, Kenny was doing this. He says, the idiots are in the market and they're going to lose their houses soon. It was going to bring the whole market down in 2008. And when it came down, Bernanke got a Nobel Prize. Can you imagine that? One of the biggest criminal Fed chairman, he gets a Nobel Prize for that. So now the whole economy is in this massive, massive bubble. And then the new Fed chairman, Powell, is raising interest rates. So this is not 2008. This is 2023. And that's the reason for this show. What do you see in 23? So, Kenny, not too many guys are going to take down a shopping center and put up a high rise. But for the average mom and pop person, what do you see for them?
Well, we've already seen, significant drops in residential, commercial,
Right.
already in the last 6 months. So, we own 10,000 units. So, we have a very active pipeline with acquisition people and analysts. And so every single week, I'm looking at, 4 to 8 deals every week, all over Texas, Arizona. So I am in touch with the markets. I know what brokers are doing. I know what sellers are doing. We know what the capital markets are doing. And, and then we also have 68 million in renovations going on in our 10,000 apartments. So I understand the supply issues and the labor issues and all that kind of stuff. So we already are seeing, well, I did a video called Pencils Down. I said, hey, time to put your pencils down and just let the Fed do their thing. And because what I'm trying to do, Robert, is I'm trying to get the sellers to adjust their expectations. There's a big difference between the bid and the ask right now, between what I'm willing to pay and what the seller is willing to do. But I have all the leverage. I hold all the cards.
Okay, so let me ask this question. Okay, so let's say I'm Johnny late to the party. I started buying property because they read your book, the ABCs of real estate, and then the property management and the advanced guide to real estate investing. Please get those books because they're more applicable today. They're Ken McElroy's books. They're more important today because this time it is different. So let's talk about, let's say I'm mom and pop. We got the real estate bug because what scares me, Kenny, is I go around town. People, I did what you said. I bought real estate. I said, yeah, that was a while ago. So let's say they bought a property in 2020 because it's 2022 right now. And they're upside down. I mean, the house, so let's say they bought it at 100,000, it's now 200,000 and coming down. They still have a job, which is key to the whole thing. So let's have a property I paid 200,000 for. It's now on its way past 100. What would you say to that person?
Well, the main thing is the cash flow. We always talk about this. You built a game around it. The principles in cash flow are exactly what people should be studying. So by the way, I bought real estate in 2005 and the value went down. But what saved me was the cash flow during those rough years. So if they can figure out a way to cover their expenses and their mortgage payment, hold on, because obviously you have to write a check to get out of something like that. So, that's the number one thing. And I think what people don't realize is that at the end of the day, the tenants, they pay your house off. So they're gold. And so you have to treat them well. You have to take care of them. And then just ride it out. Because I've been through this, and what saved my butt was my tenants and managing a property well and keeping the occupancies high. If they don't have, that let's say, and they're hemorrhaging seriously. I know a lot of people that bought Airbnb, and I was like, you should never just buy a home to Airbnb it. It needs to work like as a long-term rental.
And then, for those who may not know this, is Hawaii is a tourist industry at all the hotels. And all the guys that are in Airbnb, they got the government to outlaw Airbnbs in Hawaii. And it crushed that business.
Yep.
And just the other day, Kenny and I have a common friend. I talked to his son and says, I just bought I bought a condo for an Airbnb in Tucson. I said, holy mackerel, Tarzan, you're a little bit too late to the market. And he's all excited. And what do you say to people like that? I mean, let's say they're upside down. Let's say they paid 200 and it's 100 and they're losing money. They can't get enough tenants. How does a person get out of that?
There's only one way. And I mean, you got to pay somehow, some way. And so you have to be scrappy and figure out how to cover your expenses. And if you can't, then you're going to lose the property and you're going to lose your equity. And so that's what I see next is a lot of, Airbnbs, I don't know if is really down. So, so those people that, their expenses were $7-8 grand a month, let's say, basically the same thing you do when you're in a seat on a plane that's crashing. There's not a lot you can do unless you're cash flowing. I mean, that's it. You have to figure out a way.
Is your next book should be the ABCs of foreclosure.
Yeah. Right.
What would you recommend to mom and pop? Again, in the house they pay $200 for it in 2020. It's now $100. You can't find tenants because when the people lose their jobs, they stop renting too. Well, you have to evict them some of the times. It's a whole different market, is what we're saying here. What does that person do?
There's not a lot of choices, honestly, Robert. I mean, the bank's going to want their mortgage, just like if you stop paying your car loan, they're going to come foreclose it. That's just the bottom line. So you have to figure out a way to side hustle or whatever, because, not only would you have to pay that back. So let's say it is a 200 to 100, which is, that's the extreme. Right now, it's at least 20% off, let's say. But regardless, if the bank takes that back, you actually get a tax bill. If they have a write down, you actually get a tax bill for that too. So it's not as simple as just walking away. And you got to fight like heck to figure out how to cover that, how to get that thing and ride it through. And this happened to me in 05, 6, and 7. Ross and I scrambled and we just tried to figure out, how do we just cover our expenses and our debt? And there wasn't a tremendous amount of cash flow, but we were just super concerned about, keeping the properties that we have. And this is the entire point of, reserves and cash being, you got to have reserves and you got to have cash. I know a lot of investors distribute all their money and go buy crap, and they don't have any kind of reserves. And so they don't, any kind of a uptick like interest rates, can wipe out some of their cash flow very quickly, which is exactly what's happening. This debt is killing a lot of people. Anybody who had bridge loans, variables, adjustable rates, all that stuff, their mortgage payments are killing their cash flow.
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons that Kim and I, partner with Kenny, because the moment you start going past 2 and 3 units, the key again is the property, the management, and the financing. Those are the 3 parts that put it together. So, again, this is the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. So back in 2008, the bad news was real estate market was crashing. The good news was the Fed was dropping interest rates. So it was like hog's heaven. I mean, we creamed it. Right?
It'll happen again, too.
Okay, so this time is 2023. Real estate is crashing from a bubble. Again, 2008 was a bubble. But instead of dropping interest rates, the Fed keeps raising interest rates. So if you haven't fixed your interest rate, you're in serious trouble, right?
Without a doubt. With Robert, you think about this. The Fed or the inflation rate was 9.1 in June. So now it's 7.1. So they've raised rates 6 times and it's gone down 2%. Now there is a lag effect, of course, but it hasn't really moved much. 2%, and they've jacked rates. And so what's happened is, all the real estate is being repriced right now, and it will be repriced next year. And there's no way that the Fed's going to be under, let's say, 4 on inflation by the end of next year. In my opinion, there's no way.
Yeah. And so, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the tagline is always the good news and bad news about money. And personally, hate to be pessimistic, but this is one of the worst things I've ever seen. Do you know what I mean? Even I wrote that book with Ted Siddell, Who Stole My Pension? And if you pay any attention, what happened in England is when they screwed around there, the first thing that popped up, their pensions were broke. And what Americans are going to find out, their pensions are looted. There's nothing in them. So this is almost a perfect storm, because it's my generation, the boomer generation, their biggest asset, they say, is their house. And in Rich Dad Poor Dad, say your house is not an asset. And on top of that, they're planning a retirement, so their 401k is crashing, or IRA is crashing. And if you have a police pension or a teachers union pension, it's been looted. I mean, I hate to be so pessimistic, but I've never, Kenny and I have talked about this for years. The perfect storm is coming, and I think it's 2023. So when we come back, I want to go into what the good news is. And if we don't come back, you'll know there's no good news. Now, there's a yin and a yang. There's a positive and negative. And So Kenny, get prepared. I want you to give your forecast for 2023. We've given everybody the bad news. Some people are now on suicide watch. And the question is, when we come back, what can a person do? In my opinion, is going to be the worst economy any of our generation has ever seen. That's my opinion, and I hope I'm wrong. But I want you to be prepared, Kenny, to say, let's say I'm right and I'm the biggest pessimist on earth, and I'm right. How does Kenny McElroy prepare for 2023? Okay?
Yep.
So when we come back, we'll come right back again with Rich Dad Radio Show.
Hey everyone, it's Sarah at the Rich Dad Radio Show. Let me tell you, good sleep is the ultimate game changer, and the 8 Sleep Pod is the ultimate sleep machine. I live in Arizona. It's over 100 degrees today, and it's only expected to get hotter throughout the week. And the pod is the only sleep technology that dynamically cools and heats each side of the bed to maintain the optimal sleeping temperature for what your body needs. With the pod, you can start sleeping as cool as 55 degrees Fahrenheit or as hot as 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And clinical data shows that 8 Sleep users experience up to 19% increase in recovery, up to 32% improvement in sleep quality, and up to 34% more deep sleep. And 8 Sleep recently just launched the next generation of the pod. The new Pod 3 enables more accurate sleep and health tracking with double the amount of sensors, delivering you the best sleep experience on Earth. And all you need to do is go to 8sleep.com/richdad to start sleeping cool this summer and save up to $150 on the pod. 8 Sleep currently ships within the USA, Canada, the UK, select countries in the EU, and Australia.
Feeling powerless over current events and your financial future? Financial freedom is your freedom. Robert Kiyosaki is the best-selling author of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Over 40 million people have taken Robert's advice. Now it's your turn. Attend Robert's free virtual wealth building event. Claim your free access now at richdadfree.com. Don't wait, access is limited. Go to richdadfree.com. That's richdadfree.com.
Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, and you can check us out and all this. All of our programs are archived at richdad.com. And the reason we archive them is because one of the ways we learn is by repetition. So if you watch this program and you hear it once, listen to it again, you'll pick up even more. That's how we learn. It's like you don't learn to play golf, hitting the golf ball once. And when you listen to it again, you'll pick up even more. But more importantly, share this with friends and families and that idiot brother-in-law of yours or something, whatever like that. Listen to it and discuss it, because when you discuss it with other people, your intelligence increases. So our guest today is my business partner, Kenny McElroy. We have made freaking fortunes in real estate. And as we talked about earlier in the show, when we saw 2008 and subprime coming over, I remember I had an assistant, and she ran, this is prior to 2008, she ran down to one of the worst neighborhoods in town, and she bought a house that she couldn't afford because her thoughts were real estate always goes up in value. And she and I got into a fist fight almost because she was so sure that house was going to make her rich. And thank God, I got through to her and she didn't buy it, because right after that, the 2008 market crashed. And so let me reiterate again, the good news for Kenny and I, when we saw that, real estate prices were coming down, but interest rates were coming down. Today, interest rates are really high. I mean, real estate prices are really high, but interest rates are going up because they're trying to stop the bubble. And that's why I say, they gave Ben Bernanke, who was the Fed chairman back then, the Nobel Prize for putting up one of the biggest financial bubbles in world history. So as we promised at the Rich Dad Show, it's good news and bad news. But right now, for every action, there's an equal opposite reaction. So Kenny, what opportunities do you see for the mom and pop investor? And hopefully they're not underwater. Hopefully they call their attorney if they are and handle their bankruptcy or whatever they have to handle professionally.
Yeah. Well,
what do you see the good news is? That's the question.
Yeah. Well, there's quite a bit, actually. First of all, you can make money in either direction, right?
Up
So
and down.
that's the important thing to understand. And most people don't understand how to make money when things are going down. So, that's what we'll turn next. So there's no question that prices are going down. There's no question that commercial and residential is going down. There's no question that interest rates are up and cap rates are up and values are down. So that's clear. And those are facts. So what I've been telling everybody and what we're doing, Robert, as you know, is, we are hoarding cash right now. And that's the first thing. So we are accumulating cash to get ready, because you, as you know, you don't really learn a lot. In fact, I don't think you learn hardly anything when the market is going up.
Right.
You think you're smart. So what's really fun is understanding what's going on when the market's going down. And this is the time that we're already seeing this. We're already seeing, people that are stressed, because let's say there's a couple things. One is, if you have any kind of defined exit in 2023, and what I mean by that is a loan maturity. That's a defined exit. So if you have a loan that's maturing in 2023, you're in trouble, because, guarantee your loan rate, your interest rate is lower than it's going to be. So those people are listing. If you have an equity partner that wants their money back, or you have anything that's a defined exit for 2023, those are targets. Those are our targets. We want to go after those people.
Oh, you want to talk to the person that's being squeezed by the vice.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Right. So those are opportunities. The other is, if you bought anything last year where it was a variable rate, let's say like a home that's under construction, it could be a spec, could be one home, that somebody thought was going to be, we're going to build a $500,000 home, let's say. Well, guarantee their costs are not 500. If they started a year ago, they're over 500. That's for sure, because of the supply costs and labor costs and all that. And the construction loans on any deal, a construction loan is a floating rate debt, because there's no asset. When you have land, there's no collateral. So those construction loans are always floaters, or they're variable, or a bridge, or whatever you want to call them. So the construction costs for that spec builder, their lines of credit, they're way high. So they're getting squeezed by costs of the actual real estate itself and the costs of the debt. So you're going to see, in my opinion, a lot of home builders making massive deals next year. And, because they those two things have gotten out of hand. The reason I know this, we have 6 apartment projects under construction right now. So, over 100 million in construction. And so we're dealing with labor costs, supply costs, concrete costs, lumber costs, drywall, all that kind of stuff, and the labor associated with, and our construction interest. So this is speaking from experience. And so all of this is happening right now. So anybody who has any kind of variable loan, even on a reno, let's say they bought a 4-unit building and they have a reno, you're not going to have a fixed rate debt. So those are massive opportunities, because those sellers, they're gonna play it cool. They're gonna go, oh yeah, we're gonna try to sell this 4-unit, and meanwhile, tick tick tick, their costs are going up. So we're watching all of these deals. I looked at one yesterday in San Antonio, where the guys were 50% occupied, and they had a institutional equity that wanted their money back. So obviously that's, I'm like, okay, let's roll. Let's see what we can get this thing for, and the problem is, you got to be careful. You don't want to catch a falling knife, because the value still could go down, and you're going to step into somebody else's risk. So we passed on that one, because I don't want to. I'm like, well, you had it for 2 years. How can you only be 50% occupied? There must be some other issue. So, but those deals are starting to surface.
Correct. And my first real estate deal ever, this is way back in the dark ages, was a real estate developer who couldn't sell. And this was beachfront in Maui on the island of Hawaii. It's the prime property. And the developer was so desperate to sell. I basically offered to just take him out, and he financed it, seller financed it. And I paid him with a credit card. That was my first deal. And again, as you said earlier, then the problem with that is when you're successful, you think you're Donald Trump or something.
Yeah. You gotta believe your own BS. You gotta be careful of that.
Yeah, it went to my head and I started looking for all these deals. But what happened was I got greedy and I stopped analyzing them as close. The first deal was really tight on my analytics. Beachfront Maui, all this crap. It's $18,000 to get my credit card for $2,000 down. That was it. I was in. I made $25 a month and I was Donald Trump. So exactly as Kenny says, the problem is in a boom market, you think you're smart. Everybody thinks they are. But when the market crashes, kind of the good news is I think people come to their senses. They smell the coffee and they're more willing to negotiate is basically what you're saying.
Yeah. And it depends, like, I laugh because there's still these young guys, like, 10 years of, guys of, if you're in your mid 30s, you're in trouble. Like I'm telling because you're not going to listen to guys like us. And so, you're just going to raise that next fund, buy that next deal. Your head is down and you think tomorrow's going to be better than last. And I'm telling you, we're all, there's no way with interest rates now in the 6s and 7s that, you projected that a year ago. There's no flipping way. Your interest rates are higher. Your labor costs are higher. Any renovation or construction costs are higher. Those are facts. There's no way that you beat the market in those three things. So, and I just laugh because I see they're putting new funds out and they're raising more money and they're doing all this stuff. And people are, you can believe whatever, you can put whatever you want on a business plan and raise money. As we know, Robert, that can happen.
Yeah. When I was a kid, they said, don't trust anybody over 30. Now that I'm 75, I don't trust anybody under 30.
Yeah.
Because, they were raising the economy of buy the dip, the Fed's got your back, just keep buy, hold, pray, and all that stuff. And I see these younger guys on YouTube and all this, and we know a lot of them. They're just saying, don't worry, the market will bounce back, buy the dips and all this. And the reason, let me give it again, this economy is different. Again, interest rates are going up this time. Prices are coming down, but unemployment is going up. And the key is always unemployment. Or as we say, if your neighbor loses their job, it's a recession. If you lose your job, it's a depression. And so that's why I would, if you're in trouble, I would hire an attorney to guide you out of the mess. Don't ruin your future by defaulting or all the other stuff. But there's going to be a lot more opportunity. So what else would you say to be a person, any person, young or old, depending on the situation? Are they caught with their pants down or are you just getting started? What are the opportunities?
I think if this is a 9-inning game, Robert, we're in the second or third inning. I really believe that. Next year we'll be in 5 or 6. I still think we're going to have high inflation through the end of next year. I think the Fed's going to raise rates all year, not as aggressive, quarter point, half a point. And, we've been here before. In 2007, the federal funds rate was 5.25. Right now it's 4.25. So, you know what I mean? And that's right before the last crash. So you can see the federal funds rate got raised right before that. I was investing during that time, Ross and I, but the key was you can still buy today, by the way. It just needs a cash flow, period. So if you can pay 7% on something and you have cash flow, and then knock yourself out. The issue is people are banking on it being worth more and they're exiting without the fundamentals, that you guys teach in your cash flow game. That it all boils right down to that.
Right. So, definitely don't buy the dips. And this time is different, and it really is different right now. So I feel for younger people right now because a lot of them can't afford a home because they're still living at home or whatever the case may be.
Well, they're chasing, they're also chasing these crypto, FTX is kind of the big thing in the market. Right. I don't know if you saw this week, they're going after these YouTube influencers. And, there's a $110 million lawsuit that came out last week. They're going right after them. I mean, you just go take a look. I don't want to mention any names, but, I've been watching this. And, these are 30-year-old plus. They don't have the experience of a down market. And so,
right.
we had FTX come to me to advertise on my channel. I said, no, I don't understand like how this works, because the asset, as we know, the asset pays the return, period. It always does. So, and so I'm like, where's the asset? Like, I don't understand. So anyway, so that's all happening now. So you just got to be careful on who you're taking your advice from and, how experienced they are. And I think that's going to be the big story for 2023.
Yeah. The other thing too is that people are going to lose their homes. They may have a mortgage on this. So in other words, a home owner is going to become a renter. Do you see that as it's bad news, unfortunately, but it's, as you and I have often joked about in the side, if they stop, we have a lot of what they call low income, affordable income housing for the working class person. And unfortunately for that person, the next stop is a street. So if they can't pay their rent on a low rent income property that Kenny and I own, then they're homeless. So what's happening now is the white collar guy, let's say they're 65 years old, they're losing their house, they're losing their pension, and they're going to be moving into a rental unit. Is that a market possibly or not?
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things going on there. One, if you own a home and you bought it 2 years ago and you got a 3 or 4% mortgage, you're not listing it, because there's no way you can't even buy the same home in the same neighborhood. And, your mortgage payment is, significantly higher. So there's a lot of people that are going to stay put for a long period of time, and that's going to hurt the market. The other one is if somebody's trying to buy something, to your point, it's going to force them into rental, because the mortgage payment is significantly higher. So they're going to have to turn to rental because, one, they got to come up with more money. And two, they have to have a higher mortgage payment, and wage growth is not kept up. So the people's, wages have not kept up to the way the mortgage payments have jumped in, $700, $1,000 a month more for the same kinds of houses. So, there's, that's pushing people into the rental housing. And the other side of that, we're already undersupplied. I mean, if you look at the numbers, the last 10 years have not really kept up from a construction side. Maybe in the last 3 or 4 years they have, but prior to that, they didn't. So we have a huge glut, a huge need for housing, but it costs a lot. The interest rate to build housing is a lot. The land costs are high still. So all this needs to correct. To your point, the asset bubble needs to deflate. And then once it deflates, then people will come in and start to do deals again.
Okay. So looking into what do you see in 2023? So right now, the Fed threatens everybody. And the Fed, by the way, is basically a fascist organization because it's a private institution managing a public property, the Federal Reserve Bank. That's a definite fascism. And that's why most people like Rand Paul and all that end the Fed and all this, because all they do is they make their friends richer. That's their job. So my concern in here is this. What do you see if they keep raising interest rates? Then eventually they're going to have to print more money for social cost, like homelessness and all the other things that the socialists, the equality guys love. Do you see the same thing? They're going to have to increase spending on the people who are losers caused by the Fed?
Yes, without a doubt. We're already seeing rent control. We're seeing rent caps. We're seeing policies passed. All kinds of cities and counties and states are discussing this. And so, it's interesting. I was talking to the head of capital markets at a very big company, one of the guys that we use. And here I said, where are you guys investing? Now, this is debt and equity at the highest level. He said, We're staying away from the coasts, except for Florida, and we're focusing on the inside. And basically, he said, why would you invest in Oregon when Oregon says we're going to cap your rent and we're going to raise your property taxes? And so the financial markets are really taking note of these political decision making, and I'm not trying to be political here. I'm just saying that if you're going to, money goes where it's treated best. And so, if you're not going to invest in St. Paul, Minnesota, because they put a 3% rent cap on there, even though, by the way, it might be needed for the renter base, but the money is going to stop flowing to there and it's going to move somewhere else. And so that's what's happening now.
Would you explain what rent control is and all that?
Sure. Yeah. So a state basically controls how much you can raise your rent. And that's it. So if you're a landlord, they can cap, your increases.
Wow. Again, that's socialism or fascism again.
And by the way, I'm getting the wrap-up signal just to let you know, Robert, from Sarah.
Okay, cool. You got my seat. That's why. So anyway, again, there's good news and bad news about money. Kenny has 3 books. If you're going to get into this market, I would say you have to be a lot smarter, because from 2008 to 2022, you could be an idiot and make money. But this time, everything has changed. Our debt is this high. Our interest rates are going this way. And the social unrest or social problems will increase. So Kenny has 3 books, the ABCs of real estate. They still hold true. The ABCs of property management still hold true. And your 3rd book is on how you finance things, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's really it's a great series if you want to buy something, start small. We always say start small. You
Right.
make sure it cash flows and make sure it's well managed by property management.
In other words, today you can still do well in real estate, but you have to be a lot smarter than 2008.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And this is where all the money is going to be made too, Robert. You
Correct.
see, it's what we did in 08, 9, 10. That's what really took us, 10x, for sure.
Yeah. In 2008, we were licking our chops saying, oh man, this is our time.
Yeah.
This is our time. So anyway, I want to thank you, Kenny, and for all the years we worked together on this whole thing. And Kenny has made Kim and I multi-millionaires over. But another advantage of real estate is you don't pay taxes, which is a whole nother advantage. So please get study. And, thanks, Kenny, for being a great teacher.
Yeah. Thank you. It's great to be on the show. And as always, congrats on the home office.
Yeah, this is my inaugural program from my home office, from my home in Phoenix, Arizona. So everybody take care, and we'll be right back with the final word. Welcome back, Robert Kiyosaki, the Rich Dad Radio Show, the good news and bad news about money. And boy, it's a lot of bad news, but if you're smart, it could be very good news. Because when something comes down, something goes up. That's the law of physics there. So I want to thank Ken McElroy. He's been our partner for many, many years. We have made, we call each other billionaires because we're $1 billion in debt, because Kenny knows how to take debt and turn it into cash flow. And the more debt you use, the lower taxes you pay. So you've really got to be smarter, and you can't be stupid today. So I would get Kenny's books, the ABCs of real estate, property management, as well as the advanced guide to real estate investing. So Sarah, what are your final words on our program with Kenny and my inaugural program from my home office here?
Well, you look good, and so thankful that we got that set up. So, we have some kinks to work out, but I'm so thankful that you're able to do this from home.
Yeah.
I really appreciate Ken's time. He has a plethora of experience, right? From starting small to what, the billions of dollars he's in now. So he is really the true expert, right? We talk about finding the right teachers. He has the years of experience and knowledge to back up what he says. So, so appreciative of his time.
And he has a team.
Absolutely.
And his partner is a finance guy, Scott McAllister.
Right.
Ross McAllister, excuse me.
Russ, yeah. So I think the big takeaway for me, so we all know I bought my 2 properties last year, short-term rental through the summer. Obviously we're on a lake. So in Indiana, the lake's frozen in the winter. So I was in a unique situation where I had to find renters through the winter. How am I going to maintain that income? And I don't want to say this because I don't want people to take this out of context, but we got lucky. We listed our property on a traveling nurse site. So traveling nurses go all around the country. They work in hospitals for, 96 months. And we filled both properties over the winter with traveling nurses. Thank God, right? Because I had that same, the market has changed. For one, people aren't going on vacation, and they're certainly not going to go on vacation in northern Indiana in the winter. So that was the reason why I'm pointing it out is because you have to get creative. You have to think, where are the renters? How can I attract renters to my property? And I think, so as we head into tougher times, as Ken says, next year is not going to be any better. So what can you do as a landlord or as a property owner to get creative and to make sure that your property cash flows as you expected as we go into this kind of crazy time? So anyways, a great show. I'm so happy to kick off 2023 with this type of show, kind of a big overarching view. We gave great tips or lessons. And the number one lesson is to get educated.
Correct.
And starting out.
And a big part is don't trust anybody under 30 because all they've known is an up market.
Yep.
And if you want to be successful, you better find some old guys like me who've had the crap kicked out of ourselves. We're not here because we're the smartest guys on earth. But what Sarah's getting right now is called experience. And that experience is priceless. Even if you get your butt kicked, Sarah, it's going to be the best experience ever.
Yeah.
But you don't have to have that experience if you can avoid it.
I'd prefer not to, but I feel like studying now, even though I'm in real estate, studying now, getting my hands on as much information about what's happening and what I can do and maybe what trends are out there that I can watch to try to stay ahead of the game. I just want to protect myself as much as I can, knowing full well that a good butt kicking's probably around the corner, but I'd prefer not to. So I think that's the lesson. Just get educated as much as you can and continue that education.
But be careful who your teacher is.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Is that I meet so many young guys now, I won't mention the person's name, but they dropped out of school and bought a condo, which I don't like condos because of the management fees. And then he puts it in Airbnb and it's 200 miles from his house. That's all the mistakes that you guys make. Yeah. Real estate, your first buy would be within 30 miles because you'll always have problems with real estate because of property management.
Mm-hmm.
So I would strongly advise and then plus if you have financing, like an SBA loan and all that, you're in serious trouble. The moment you take out a loan, you basically have bought a security and you default on that, they'll destroy your life forever.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why when I talk to younger people, I would study Kenny's book, especially the Advanced Guide to Real Estate Financing, because financing is the key. So is property management. And so is the basics of it, because they're all the same. Whether it's real estate or a business, it's all the same.
Yep. So
I wouldn't trust anybody under 30 right now. I would find an old guy who's got his butt kicked a number of times and run your ideas past them. That's why I had my rich dad. I asked my poor dad, a PhD in education. He knew nothing. Why would you trust a stupid school teacher just because they have a PhD? I want somebody who's had their butt kicked around the block a number of times. And, you got to take their advice with a grain of salt. I would ask the old guys, what were your biggest mistakes you made? Because school teachers, when it comes to property and stuff like that, they don't make mistakes. That's why they're poor. If you don't make mistakes, you don't get any experience. Without experience, you're fucking book smart. Right, Sarah?
That's right.
You're not book smart anymore, right?
No.
You're now frozen lake smart.
Yeah, I just appreciate this show and your time, and I'm so glad you're able to do this. And looking forward to 2023 for sure.
Yeah, 2023 is going to be exciting because we're going to make even more money, right, Sarah?
I hope so.
This is no, it's no hope, man. Either you will or you won't. Hope is for hopeless people. You know, it's okay to be a prayer, meditate, all that other stuff that people do.
Yeah.
But hope is for hopeless people. Again, thank you everybody for listening to the Rich Dad Radio program. 2023 is going to be a fantastic year if you have real world experience, education, and know the fundamentals. Thank you very much. Bye.
lụt nước lũ bắt cá giữa đường biển trời